Lake, and welcome to the October edition of the Western States Beekeeper Buzz. Today we're going to talk a little bit about preparing to get through the winter months. Now, we're here in California. We really don't have much of a winter. It doesn't get really cold. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the western states, Idaho in particular, maybe parts of Oregon and Washington, that actually get a real winter and it gets cold. In those climates, it's really important to make sure that we're giving our bees the best opportunity, best chance of being healthy and successful through the winter. At this point in the year, we should have already pulled our honey supers. We should have already treated for mites. We should have been finishing up really our hive inspections. Going forward, we're not going to do a lot of inspections through the rest of the winter months, but we still want to make sure we're doing everything we can to make sure this colony has a great chance of getting through the winter and being healthy coming into the spring. When I go into winter, I'm thinking about a few things in terms of what's going on inside of this hive. The first thing I'm thinking about is, what does the bee population look like? Ideally, we've got a lot of winter bees, and we've got 2 boxes that are full of bees. That's going to give this colony the best chance of getting through the winter, staying warm. The next thing I'm thinking about is resources. You know, is there a lot of honey stored in this hive? Hopefully there is. That's going to give the bees plenty of food to get through the winter. And the third thing, the thing I'm probably worried about the most, is my mite levels. Ideally, we will have treated August, September, and we will have gotten these mites under control and down to a manageable level. But what happens if any of those 3 things just isn't happening? Well, let's start with the bee population. If there's just not enough bees to fill up these 2 boxes, I'm gonna do something about it. I'm gonna reduce these 2 boxes down to 1 so that there's less extra space and the bees have a real good chance of being able to keep this whole colony warm. So what if this hive doesn't have enough resources? What if this hive just doesn't have enough honey to sustain this colony through the winter? Well, in that case, we're going to supplementally feed. There are some climates, California is a prime example, where we can feed liquid feed all the way through the winter. That is not the case in some of the colder climates. In those cases, what we're going to use is either a fondant or what I have right here, which is a winter patty. If I'm going to use a winter patty, the way that this is applied is right on top of the top bars of the bottom box. And I'm going to feed somewhere between 1 and 3 pounds of this product. Just for context, a pound of this is probably around the size of a baseball, where 3 pounds is probably the size of a softball. So just visually, you don't have to be precise. This is not chemistry. All we're doing is making sure that we're giving these bees enough ample feed to get them through the winter. After we think about what's going on inside the hive, we got to think about the elements outside the hive. In some of these colder climates, moisture, wind, snow, rain, rodents, all these things become a challenge for us. So let's start out with moisture. Moisture comes in a variety of ways. It can be rain. It can be just cold air coming in through the entrance and meeting up with the warmth that's being created by the bees, and it just creates moisture. And that moisture will do a lot of damage to this hive, and it'll probably wipe it out. So how do we combat that? Well, the easiest way to do it is with a moisture board, which is this right here, which is just a real absorbent, almost like a particle board material, and a ventilated super. So we're going to use these in conjunction, and the way we're going to do this is we're just going to put the moisture board on top of the inner cover, and we're going to put the ventilated super on top of the moisture board, and then we're going to put our lid on top. And all this is going to do is when that condensation and that moisture rises, it's going to be absorbed by that moisture board. And man, it's going to make a big difference in just those bees' ability to keep that hive warm and dry. The other thing that I'm going to be a little bit worried about is wind. Ideally, I'm not going to have this hive's entrance facing where the prevailing wind is coming from. So that's an easy solution. The other thing that I'm probably going to do, and I'm going to do this to combat the wind, and I'm also going to do it to combat rodents like mice from getting into that hive. Just a little bit about mice. Mice in the winter are looking for a warm place to nest up, and a beehive is a great place to do it. Our bees are clustered up, they're not quite as defensive, and that mouse will climb in there and it will do a lot of damage to the comb. and it will create a lot of problems for your bees. So to combat that, there's a couple things you can do. One, you can just use an entrance reducer. I recommend the larger space. If the bees want it smaller, they'll make it smaller with propolis. The other is a mouse guard. Mouse guards are great because it gives still enough ventilation for the hive. It gives ample space for the bees to get in and out of, but the holes are small enough that no mouse is going to get through. So highly recommend both of those. This right here is called a bee cozy. You will not see these in California. It just doesn't get that cold in most of the parts, or really any of the parts of California. Some of the colder climates in the West, man, specifically Idaho, where it gets really, really cold, man, this has got a real practical application. All this is an insulated cover that goes on the outside of your hive, and it is going to make a really big difference in allowing the bees to really keep the inside of this hive warm. So the way this works is you're just going to pull your cover off, and it just slips right over the top. A couple things you want to consider is don't completely cover up the entrance of this hive when you put this bee cozy on. Just slide it right on like that. Reinstall your cover. And it's going to make a big difference in those really, really cold climates. The last thing that I'll bring up in terms, and it seems like a little thing, but it's not. It's actually an important thing, is if you're not on level ground, or if you don't have this hive on a hive stand, make sure that the front end of the hive where the entrance is not tilted up at all. What we want to do is make sure if there is any condensation in this hive, whether it's rainwater or just condensation that's created inside of the hive, that is flowing out the front and it's not flowing back to the back of the hive. So just keep that in mind when you're positioning your hives. Just, if anything, keep the back of the hive tilted up just a little bit, or at the very worst, flat. What you don't want is the front of the hive tilted up, keeping all that condensation in the back. So that's about all I've got for you today. If you have any questions or comments, man, please leave them. We'd love to see them and answer them. And next month, we'll be back with another Beekeeper Buzz. Thanks for watching.